it is the middle of June and we have yet to go anywhere because the van has been in one shop or another and just in a state of not knowing if they can even fix the vehicle. The great news is I have the van. She is supposedly finally roadworthy again. My negative/realistic side of the brain is telling me this is possibly the beginning of the end. Camper vans have an average lifetime of 20 years. Marguerite is 24. But until this summer, I didn't realize we were at the age where I have to worry about the transmission, etc., etc., etc. So what has been happening with the van? Why has she been so crazy? For that, we have to go back in time to April of this year because it was early April when I would be driving. My speedometer started to act up. Sometimes it would have no trouble telling me, my speed. Other times it bounced, and other times it would tell me that I'm not moving at all when clearly I was. In my many years of driving, I've never had a speedometer issue. So went to the mechanic, took my van to the mechanic. He's had it for about an hour and he calls me just now to say that the operation of the vehicle seems okay. The wires look good. It might end up being a computer problem, but yeah, it's just not worth fixing. So I should just continue driving with an app so I know what speed I'm at. I guess I'm okay with that. And so he thinks my computer might be going bad. However, he also told me replacing the computer would be about $1,000 job and that it probably wasn't worth it at this time because there were no other symptoms. So we go on spring break with my speedometer, sometimes working, sometimes not working, but generally we'll say everything was good. Now, this is important for a future video. I did hit an unexpected speed bump, which shook my van a lot more than I think my van has ever felt, which broke my freshwater tank. That's a story for later. We're not going to worry about that. But my point is, I went on spring break with my speedometer not working very well, but otherwise the van felt fine. All right, we get back. My son goes back to school. We're doing good. So I make an appointment for an oil change because when my son is done with school, we do have a summer trip planned. I'm going to need an oil change and for somebody to look at my vehicle. So now it's the middle of May. In addition to the speedometer issues, there is some light sputtering. This is where I feel like I messed up. As soon as my vehicle started sputtering, I should have taken her in to the mechanic. However, she sputtered for just moments and then she would be fine. And it was a busy week at school. My son's involved in plays. So the last week of school, there's just stuff going on. I'm constantly driving, taking my son from one place to another, and we're busy. The slight sputtering lasted, we'll say, a week before my check engine light comes on. I've had my check engine light come on before. It means a lot of different things. However, because I've been having the sputtering, which I've basically been ignoring, and then the light came on, I knew this was going to be a big deal. The check engine light happened on a Saturday night, like 11 p.m., taking my son home from his last play showing. When the check engine light hit, my engine started to also sputter, and it was kind of sputtering all the way home. Now, luckily, we're talking about like a 2-mile situation, so it wasn't a huge period of time, but enough time to make me nervous. My mechanic does not work on the weekends, and it was Monday that I had my oil change appointment. So I already had an appointment for the earliest day possible. I basically just ignored my car Sunday. I didn't do anything with her. And then early Monday, I woke up to take her to the shop, praying that she would drive, enough to get me to the shop. So I wake up super early and my dad happened to say, hey, you should check the oil and the coolant level. Having an older vehicle has always meant that, I would say every couple of months or so, I'm probably checking my oil. So far, I've never checked my oil and seen a problem. So I just looked at the oil. I knew the oil was good. I have never looked at the coolant level. The reservoir was completely dry. I didn't look in the radiator, which I should have, but the reservoir itself, completely dry. So I'm so glad my dad asked me to look. I don't have any coolant, so I just get water and I fill up the gallon or so reservoir, and then I drive. Again, I'm literally like a couple miles from the shop, but I sputter over to the mechanic, grateful that I made it, and just feeling so stupid that I've never checked the coolant. Was the radiator empty all week? I don't even know. Now, I get to the mechanics. I have time because the mechanic's not going to open for a while. So of course I lift the hood and I look at the reservoir. I don't open the radiator because it's hot, but I would look at least at the reservoir. And so when I first arrived, the reservoir level has increased, which is normal. So that's a good sign. But as I'm recording and just looking at the coolant, still feeling like an idiot, the water level is visibly going lower. That's not normal. So I'm in the best place for this to happen because I'm at the mechanics. So I'm trying to remain calm about it. But what this means is not only was the reservoir empty, but my system, if you will, was probably empty. If not empty, just at least low on coolant because it started to suck that water in. Anyway, she was at the shop for a few days. $1,400 later, coolant system should be good. My front shocks should be good. Everything is good except for the transmission, which my mechanic thinks needs to be replaced / refurbished. Now, most general mechanics, they are not transmission specialists. So if you need a transmission refurbished, you need a specialist. I got a highly recommended transmission specialist off to see the transmission guy, take her in, and he drives Marguerite with me, which was awesome because I'm not a mechanic. I'm certainly not a transmission specialist. So he's letting me know why he knows this is not a transmission problem. Transmission guy thinks it's not the transmission. He thinks it's the speed sensor all along. And it's definitely electrical. This is an automatic vehicle, so I don't control what gear I'm driving in, right? This is an automatic. She does that herself. So essentially the way it works is the speedometer tells the computer how fast I'm going. The computer tells the transmission, hey, she's speeding up. You need to shift gears. The computer tells my transmission what to do, right? Whereas in a manual, I tell my transmission what gear to go in. So sometimes, right? Because again, my speedometer sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. Sometimes my computer tells my transmission what to do, and other times it doesn't. And so regardless of how much I'm pressing on the gas and I'm trying to tell my baby to speed up, she's not doing it. So this sputtering happens. I felt like the little engine that could, although a lot of the times she never got to the moment to say, I can. Like, we stayed in the I think I can environment. So take it back to my mechanic who, one, does not believe that it's an electrical issue. And he doesn't believe it because when the transmission slips, it is not necessarily the same time that the speedometer is having issues.
The speedometer issue has been going on for a while.
Yes.
The slipping is not.
That was his logic, is the two are not related to each other.
There was zero slipping in a speedometer that was going crazy.
Now, hindsight is 2020. So I can tell you now, it was the computer. When it comes to the computer, and again, not a mechanic, not a computer specialist. I am an electronics technician, however. So I can tell you that depending on what part of the computer is going bad, and guys, this is a 2000 vehicle. To my knowledge, she's never had the computer replaced. So when a computer starts going bad, sometimes it's more than one thing going bad. Sometimes there are multiple issues. There's many parts to a computer, just as there's many parts to a vehicle. For example, the coolant issue had nothing to do with my speedometer issue, right? The shock issue of my vehicle had nothing to do with my speedometer issue. Yeah, so my baby's getting old. She's got issues. Again, hindsight is 2020. I went back to the same mechanic because I do trust my mechanic. I think he knows what he's doing. However, with intermittent faults, with faults that are not happening constantly, it's difficult to troubleshoot. Okay. As a technician, I know this. I give a lot of grace to my mechanic, especially for intermittent faults. So I take her back, and my mechanic does not like hearing that maybe he didn't look at the electrical closely enough. So he's like, nope, it's not the electrical. It's definitely not the electrical. I know it. I've already checked it, et cetera, et cetera. I'm thinking in my mind, you already told me that the computer is probably bad. You've already told me this. So I'm already thinking it's the computer. However, as a non-mechanic, I don't know that it's the computer. So he says, I'll see you in 2 weeks and we'll see what happens. So for 2 weeks, this baby has been sitting in my dad's driveway, just collecting dust. 2 weeks goes by, he gets the vehicle, he confirms it is the computer. Another $1,200 later, finally gets the van. My mechanic said he drove her for 22 miles, and in the 22 miles, no issues. Speedometer is now working. I'm not sputtering. We should finally be good. So yeah, I've got Marguerite back. Because it took so long to repair the van, I've made other commitments. We will not be starting van life for a little over a week. So Alex is going to get a shorter van life experience this summer. He's also going to be spending time with his dad. So it is what it is. And I feel like this summer is so deserved. Like I need a break from the mechanic. I'm hoping that the next thing that breaks in my van, because something will break, is going to be minor, right? It's going to be something that doesn't have terrifying words like transmission or engine or anything like. So that's it. I have another week before I can leave. Hopefully there'll be another video before summer officially starts, but I am just nervous that the other shoe is going to drop before we can leave on our summer trip. And I'm nervous that something might happen during the summer trip, which would be awful. Like if my van's going to break down, let it be near my dad's house. But so far, and I've had this vehicle back a couple days, I was too nervous the day I got the van back and yesterday to make an official statement that the van is good again. So, but I've been driving her a couple days now, and I think it's safe for me to say she's doing good, and I don't think I've got any major issues with the van at this point, and summer can finally begin. It felt like a really close call.